Hi, I'm Doug, and on behalf of everyone at Worship Musician Magazine, I want to welcome you to episode 1 of the Worship Teams and Development Show. We're so glad to have you here. This show is really focused on helping teams not only champion their way through the coronavirus season, but also prepare for the season beyond, because we know God's going to do amazing things along the way. The content for this episode has been split into 3 main areas: worship, teams, and development. And the links for each of the segments in this show can be found down below in the show notes. In the worship section, we've got a great interview with Worship Together's Jessica Marion. They have fabulous song resources for Easter. Then in the team section, we kick things off with an interview with Griffin. He's not only the co-host for the show, he's also the worship and creative arts director at Church of the Highlands. Some of his responsibilities include being over worship around events like Easter across their 22 campuses. He's got some really insightful things to say about leading teams in this season. We've also repurposed a video that I did around video and communications in this particular season. Short version of that is, point all your people to your website, because that's the one place where you can link them off if you want to your Facebook Live. You can embed your YouTube video, and it all sits alongside your giving. And see, now you don't even have to watch that segment. All right, moving on, for pastors doing church at home, and I mean pastors doing church at home, we've got an interview with Shure's Laura Davidson. This is the MV88 Plus from Shure. There's a link for it down below. If your pastor is going to be doing church on their own, they're going to want to know about this. Then last, but certainly not least, in the development section, we have a great interview with Kristian Ponsford from Multitracks. In this season in particular, where we may be dealing with smaller teams, more and more people are going to be thinking about how to on-ramp Multitracks. Awesome. All right, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we'd love to invite you to do so. Also ring the bell. And down below in the show notes, you'll always be able to find a link to Worship Musician. With that said, let's get to it.
From charts that you can easily transpose and print to insightful artist interviews, Worship Together does a great job of providing free resources for churches and worship leaders. They've also put together some great resources for Easter, which is why we wanted to invite Worship Together marketing manager Jessica Marion to be part of this episode. Jessica, we're super excited that you're able to join us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Easter is a time of celebration, but picking the right songs can be an agonizing and time-consuming process. How did you approach choosing the songs you suggest?
Yes, that's a great question. A lot of thought goes into picking the playlist that we actually update weekly at Worship Together. We want to keep the songs fresh and relevant, and we know that we're talking to a lot of churches. So we want to meet all the different genres and styles that of songs that churches might sing. Alongside that, we like to lead kind of a mixture of new songs in the church that could be an Easter anthem for this year, while also incorporating songs that are super singable for the congregation that they would already know, the big Easter anthems, if you will. So we try to have a good variety of new and big and powerful songs that may already be recognized by the church.
You've actually broken the song list down into suggestions for Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. Can you share your insights on the nuances that separate ideal songs for these services?
Yes, beyond the Easter set list that we're updating every week, we wanted to go into a little more detail, as we know the services leading up to Easter Sunday are equally as important, and that includes Palm Sunday and Good Friday. So on our list, we wanted to provide different song ideas for each of those themes as well. Obviously, Palm Sunday is going to feel more celebratory and upbeat, celebrating the themes of Jesus being our King and coming into the town of Jerusalem. And so Hosanna and a lot of those kind of songs are obviously the big themes for that Sunday, but I think there's a lot of other worship songs that kind of capture that feeling of worshiping our King and celebrating the good news that he is here. And then going into Good Friday, I think that service is obviously a little bit more melancholy and reflective over the weight of the cross, taking our sin and the sacrifice that took, the weight that is to us personally, and just focusing and fixating on the crucifixion of Jesus. So those songs are going to reflect that theme, and Easter is going to reflect the theme of celebration and resurrection and new life, both demonstrated through Jesus and also the invitation for us as believers too. So we really tried to capture those themes in the song lists that we made for those playlists.
Once you drill down to the song level, you get an audio file, videos, free charts that you can transpose and print, as well as the tempo, suggested keys, themes, and spiritual references, and even the CCLI number. That's a lot of information, and even better, it's 100% free. This must take a lot of time to put together.
Yes, the goal of a song page on Worship Together is to provide everything that a worship leader or team member may need to lead that service. We really want to make it an experience for people. So we do have the audio player on the song page where you can choose your favorite streaming platform, and you can listen to that while you play along to the chords, while you watch a video, maybe while you try to find the perfect scripture or theme or connecting point to use while you lead that song in the service, just to give it more context. And so we really want to provide that experience for people.
You've also got links to paid resources like PCO, Multitracks, iTunes, and Spotify. It's subtle, but your approach is all about process. This is obviously important to you. Can you speak to that?
Yes, the song page is central for finding anything that you need to lead the song, and that includes the worship technology or worship resource pieces, Multitracks, adding to Planning Center, all of those great tools. We want to keep that all in one place so that you can find everything that you need in just one easy page.
Jessica, I also found it really convenient that you have an Easter worship playlist on YouTube, which makes it super easy to jump from song to song. Easy being the operative word. I take it that was something that was important to you as well?
Yes, beyond just a listening experience, we wanted to provide a visual through a YouTube playlist that people could also enjoy their Easter favorites through.
Hey, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Chris, moving forward, I think churches are going to really rethink the way they approach doing church and their communication strategies. Be really curious to know what you think some of the big takeaways that we've learned in the process of doing this first episode are that could be really valuable for teams and leaders.
Doug, that is the hot topic right now. That is the thing that everyone that I know of is thinking about. What will be of immediate value right now? We want to think if you are not able to hold your Sunday service in your facility, how can we create our service online and direct our patrons there? And so I'm thinking about things like technology. If I don't have really nice equipment, lighting, cameras, I'm thinking about a high quality iPhone and Facebook Live, and then directing my church's social media traffic to that area and making sure that it's clearly communicated what our next steps are for the immediate future. I'm also thinking about online giving. If you don't have that set up currently, what is the easiest way to communicate that to your congregation?
Chris, the event side of Easter falls under your leadership for all 22 of the Church of the Highlands campuses. That's a huge amount of responsibility. What advice do you have for leaders in terms of walking teams through the kind of uncertainty we're all facing right now?
Leadership advice, yes. So Proverbs says that with much counsel, plans succeed. So we're definitely taking the advice of government and health officials as far as what to do with services. But with my team in general, I'm just encouraging them that thank the Lord that we have Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, and we are trusting in Him for not only our health but also just provision and our daily needs and daily bread. But for myself as a leader, I'm just encouraging my team that we're going to get through this. We are thinking about the contingencies and what alternate plans may look like in a time of challenge, but yes, we are going to keep positive, stay stay upbeat, and love the Lord through this.
Chris, as you know, I'm a huge fan of the growth track, so I'd be curious to know, how is the growth track benefiting your teams in this season right now?
Yes, growth track. We get all kind of questions about the growth track, and basically that is the onboarding process for our church, and a lot of other churches have adopted that as in some variation of their process as well. Basically, if you are a visitor to the church and you've come and you've decided that you'd like to join the church, you go through our 4-week process, and it tells you everything about the church's money, the bylaws of the church, the leadership of the church, the theology of the church. And then when you've completed those 4 weeks, you graduate, and we have a whole bunch of opportunities to get you plugged in and serving at the church. And so we do everything from your personality profile to, oh my goodness, just where you can serve on a Sunday. But in a time like this, in a time of challenge with this coronavirus, we have all of the information needed to have constant contact with our team. And so that's a big help. Also, we have a massive dream team. That's our volunteers that have completed Growth Track. And so if we need to mobilize that team to go help in an area of our community, that can also help navigate the challenges not only of our church but of our community at large.
As of midnight here in the San Francisco Bay Area, people are asked not to leave their homes. The norm that we've known is not going to be the norm for quite some time. What advice do you have for teams and leaders in terms of staying focused on what Easter is really about?
Yes, my advice for staying focused around what Easter is really about. We're not going to live in fear. We are going to heed all the precautions. We're going to do our due diligence. But at the end of the day, Easter is about celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and the salvation that He has given to us. And so that is what we are going to stay focused on. In the peripherals, we are going to be aware of all the other things that are going on and doing a good job in preparing for that. With what we've been entrusted with, but that is our focus, to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Doug recently shared this next segment to help churches address the communication and production challenges churches will be facing in this coming season, and we thought it would be helpful to include it in this episode as well.
Hi, I'm Doug, and on behalf of everyone at Worship Musician Magazine, we wanted to put this video together to help churches and creative teams navigate the bumpy road that we're all on during the coronavirus outbreak and the aftermath beyond. And to do that, we've broken this video down into 3 sections. We're going to start off talking about communication because that's so vital in this season. Then we're going to talk about content creation. There are some very interesting opportunities in terms of how we get a chance to redefine the way we do church, and that's pretty exciting. And finally, the heartbeat behind all of this. The coronavirus is a tragedy that has yet to really thoroughly unfold. But more importantly than anything that we can be thinking is what we can be doing. We have the opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus with our family, our neighbors, especially the elderly, our church congregations, and the community at large. And this is an opportunity we definitely don't want to miss. Awesome. So let's take a moment and talk about communication. My biggest suggestion with your communication would be this: a high-level strategy with a low level of threshold required to carry that out. Today's date is Thursday, March 12th, pretty early on in this whole thing. So a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind. 3 main layers of communication. Internally with your teams. Email and Planning Center Online are great for that. Then there's communication with your congregation. Whether you've already done this or are about to do this or might want to do it to make things a little bit easier moving forward, my suggestion would be this: send a message to all the different platforms that you reach people on, and then tell them, preferably with a video, that you're going to be reducing the number of main places that you're communicating to a smaller number. Preferably your website, maybe a church app, which is what my church is doing. That makes it a lot easier to have a high-level strategy with a low level of threshold to carry that out. What's great about a website is you can embed your video. You have all the other resources, giving, all those things are right there. Your website was pretty much built for a season like this. Leverage it. Okay, then there's communication to the community at large. That is where Facebook is particularly valuable, but it does have limitations. Facebook is like a press release. It's here today, forgotten tomorrow. So this again is where you kind of go, hey, this is what we want to tell you about today. Maybe we have supplies for the elderly, or maybe we're delivering food to elderly people. We're doing something. Find out more on our website. Website. Can't stress that enough. Okay, content creation. One of my favorite things about this season is it enables us to utilize some of these tools that we see content creators from YouTube and even television, bring that stuff into what we're doing at church. There are also some things that we're going to be able to do that we've never been able to do in the past. Tonight, I was at a video shoot for my church, and one of the things that we did was we shot the content in such a way we can potentially make 3 different versions of our Sunday service, and we're going to kind of figure that out in the next couple of days. What the coolest part is that we're thinking about doing something called Family Church. Not only that, having a Family Church Challenge where we ask churches to come together for 4 weeks and watch church as a family. So the deal is, traditionally on Sunday, the kids go off to kids' church, the adults kind of hang out in the main auditorium. What we're going to do with one of these edits, and I think it's going to be the way we're going to roll, is the kids and the adults are going to come together and watch church together. The adults are going to comment about the content that we shot for kids' church, which was really amazingly good. And in turn, the kids are going to get a chance to comment about the stuff that was made for the grown-ups. The conversations that we're going to have are unlike anything that we've traditionally been able to do at church. Tremendously powerful. All right, before we get to the geeky gear things, I want to talk about some other things that are going to be really valuable for you to think about. First of all, if you haven't started streaming before, don't start in this season. It is a cantankerous thing. Wait until you totally own it before rolling it out. Lots of other things you can do. Now, if your church has already been streaming, your pastor is used to speaking to a room filled with people where potentially there's a camera in the back of the room, or there's some other cameras, but they're engaging a room filled with people. That is markedly different than having a video production crew taking a set and having a pastor who's used to engaging a room full of people sit here and have to stare face to face with a camera. It can be really intimidating, and it takes some time to get used to, unless you do a couple of things, which I like to think of as flipping the script. When I look at a camera, I actually know that, kind of unlike a Sunday morning where you can only have so much eye contact with people before it gets a little weird, I can look into the camera and I'm looking directly into your eyes. That's incredibly powerful for a pastor to be able to speak directly to you through this camera, through the internet, and actually have a message that resonates in your heart. That's very powerful. Now, that said, there are a couple of things that aid that process. Smiling with the eyes. That does a lot. One of the things we've been working with in the background here is actually watching video with the volume off. You will learn more about your strange mannerisms watching things with sound off than, honestly, it's been huge for us. We've learned so much. All right, the other thing is this gesticulating thing. Some people have a tendency to do the same motion over and over when they start the sentences. They do this. One of the great things about just watching with the sound down is you begin to kind of go, oh, I do the same thing over and over. Let me find a couple of different gestures, talk about the heart, talking about you, talking about God, making sure that we're not just doing the same gestures over and over. Again, having the sound off is a great way to get there. Speaking of sound, that gets me to my little show and tell microphone dealie. I don't see microphones. I see different tools for content creation and different types of content creation. The Shure MV88 Plus, I think about a pastor visiting old folks who need supplies and documenting that with permission, of course. I also see the pastor having this back on their desk, reflecting on that experience. These things shoot at 4K now. The audio, thanks to the microphone, is phenomenal. It comes with a free bundled app. It comes with this very cool little Manfrotto stand. These things are awesome. RE320. You're probably used to seeing sportscasters with those silly headphones. They could learn a thing or two from us. That looks so dumb, but They're talking to each other quite often via something like Skype. Imagine that your pastor has a pastor friend that's in New York or Italy. Imagine them having a Skype call and then recording that and then being able to have that part of your Sunday YouTube presentation. That's very powerful. It's not something that we normally think about doing. It would be a great addition. This guy right here is a Zoom handheld recorder. Say, for example, you send your worship team down to the local nightclub that's got this amazing lights and sound and all that, and that place, by the way, will be completely deserted. You can capture 2-track audio off the board directly into this thing via the combi jacks, that is to say 1/4-inch and XLR jacks. These are great. I have a lot of experience using these. I've never had one fail. Shotgun mics. This one here, the one that's up there, I am a huge fan of shotgun mics. I am not a fan of lavaliers for a couple of reasons. If you have somebody with a necklace and a lavalier, you're going to hear potentially every time they move. The other thing is when your head goes towards your chest, they get louder and bassier because of what's called the proximity effect. Shotguns are awesome. Generally speaking, you want to keep them just outside of your frame, pointed about this far away from your mouth. Great way to go. That one's my Rode. This is my Audio-Technica. This right here is kind of the secret sauce. I'm not using it, but in a moment I'm going to demonstrate what you can do. This is a VR1 HD. It basically is a 3-camera switcher, works via HDMI. A couple of things you want to keep in mind. There's probably going to be some things you're going to learn about cables. This is HDMI to mini HDMI. To get this thing to work, you have to use a USB 3 cable. I found out the hard way. There's going to be, again, a little bit of a learning curve for some of this stuff. But this thing is awesome. For example, if I had camera 1, that's this guy. Then when I go over to camera 2, it moves to my B camera here where I point at my little dongle there. And I move back to my A cam, so on and so forth. Very cool to have that sort of control at your fingertips. Very powerful. Okay, this guy, secret sauce. When you're doing video, you start to notice things about sound that you wouldn't normally notice on a Sunday morning. Explosives are when somebody goes, boom. You hear it on Sunday morning, but when you hear it in video, it's really noticeable. If you're using something like an SM58, whether it's a wired or a handheld wireless, you just kind of unscrew the top of those, put one of these in there. We use these at my church. They are awesome. No more explosives. Okay, this guy is a cloud lifter. What does a cloud lifter do? Well, some of the microphones that are out there, like a Shure SM7B, going into a handheld recorder like that, sometimes the level is too low, and like the name implies, the cloud lifter raises the volume. Okay, that gets us to the end of show and tell. Let's talk about the heartbeat. Like many of the people I've spoken with recently, I too have an elderly parent that's at risk from the coronavirus. My mom is 89 years old and lives in a retirement community. But here's the thing. There are some practical things that as believers we can do in spite of what's going on around us. Praying for one another is one of the most powerful things we have at our disposal, and it's something that we can do without ceasing. I just want to encourage you, if some of this stuff is freaking you out, I think we're all a little nervous, but we're going to come out of this, I believe, stronger than the way we went into it. Thanks so much for watching this video, and God bless. As of midnight last night, the San Francisco Bay Area is pretty much on lockdown, which means there's a bunch of pastors sitting at home going, what am I going to do about this weekend service? The answer is buy a Shure MV88 Plus from Amazon. There's actually a link down below there. And even better, there's a card that's about to appear up there from Sean Cannell and Heather Torres with his great tutorial on how to shoot and edit video inside your iPhone. This also obviously works with an Android for those of you who are Androidian. But even better, we reached out to my friend Laura Davidson. She works for Shure. She's a content creator, brilliant musician, and a trusted industry colleague. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really awesome to be here.
Laura, as you know, I absolutely love the MV88 Plus because it takes my iPhone and turns it into a series content creation vehicle, 4K video that looks great. And thanks to the mic, it sounds great. That said, the native microphone inside the iPhone there is kind of, Is that surprising to you?
So all of our devices have come a long way in terms of the camera that's in the device. Unfortunately, the microphone has kind of lagged behind, but fortunately for us at Shure, we're able to offer you a great solution for that in the MV88 Plus. Because if you think about it, the devices that we use, the microphone in it is meant to give us a good experience with our phone calls, not necessarily professional quality sounding audio for recordings. So I think it's kind of an afterthought. So it gives us a great chance to offer you a great solution.
As somebody that works with audio on a very regular basis, I love the ability to sculpt the sound with the free bundled app. That said, the icon-driven presets could be intimidating for new users. Where would you suggest people who are new to this whole audio thing start off?
When you get your MV88 Plus home, when you first plug it in, you're going to be prompted to download either the Motive audio or video app. Both of those apps are free. And I would suggest familiarizing yourself with those first and foremost, because within the apps, you have a lot of features that you can control on the microphone. Specifically with the MV88 Plus, the greatest thing that you can control is the polar pattern. And that's really special because you can change how the microphone physically listens to the source that's coming into it. So for example, right now I have it in monocardioid mode, which is turning off the stereo microphone and focusing the mic directly on my voice so that you can hear me and less of the room. But if you wanted to open it up to stereo, for example, to capture the sounds of a service with the whole sanctuary and the sermon and everybody and all the feelings that you can capture there, stereo is a great option for that. And mono bidirectional, one of the other polar patterns, is wonderful for capturing an interview without having an obtrusive microphone in somebody's face going back and forth. You can simply set the microphone on the table and just have a conversation, and it will record each person on each side of the mic because it is a stereo mic. And then the last polar pattern is called raw mid-side, which is a great option if you want to be able to split your tracks into two independent tracks in post-production. So just something to keep in mind. So get the apps installed and then familiarize yourself with the polar pattern options. There's also a headphone out on the back of the MV88 Plus, so be sure to plug in some headphones to really hear the difference that those polar patterns offer.
One of my favorite things about the setup was how easy it was to get started. The first day that I used it, I went out and shot my Helix Takes a Swim in the San Francisco Bay. And then I went and shot a wedding. And it was neat is with the Manfrotto tripod, little Pixie tripod, I was able to shoot and get really smooth shots.
The Manfrotto Pixie tripod that comes with the MV88 Plus video kit is really handy because it gives you a nice smooth video when you're going around. You can hold it in your hand, and it's not a stabilizer, but it still gives you that extra level of stability by not having to hold onto the camera directly or the phone directly. So right now it's sitting on my desk and pointing at me, and I have it fully extended, but you can, again, collapse it, hold it in your hand, and have a nice experience there. So it's been a really great partnership.
Given everything that's going on with the coronavirus, I think the MV88 Plus offers a lot of options to churches in terms of getting great audio and video in places that we might not normally be shooting. That said, how have you been using this thing, and what do you enjoy about it the most?
The MV88 Plus has been a tremendously helpful tool for me in terms of capturing field audio, also just capturing my song ideas. And one of the things I love about the mic is that it can capture the sound of my baby grand piano, which I've always wanted to do, but it's downstairs and my studio is upstairs. So now I'm able to capture a great stereo image of the piano. And then if I want to go a little bit more in depth, I can schlep all my gear down there with some more mics. But I really haven't needed to get great sounding audio. It's just an amazing feature of this microphone. The sound quality is second to none.
So what are some of the coolest things you've seen people doing with the MV88 Plus?
Shure created a really cool project in cooperation with Red Bull. This was at the launch of the MV88 Plus, and it was called Soundscapes. And that's my favorite thing that I've seen done with the 88 Plus, because we sent producers into the field to capture some really cool sounds, like at an air show, the sounds of the planes taking off, landing, their engines, and then there was another one at kind of like a car dirty kind of thing, and then one at this abandoned oil rig kind of thing out in the middle of the ocean, which was really neat. And then the producers went back and created tracks from those sounds. So you can check that out if you want to take a look at redbull.com/soundscapes, and highly recommend it.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people making as they start off creating content?
I can't really speak to not making mistakes with audio or video because I do it all the time, but I will give you some of my tips from what I've encountered after doing a million of these. The first one being just take a look around and make sure that your room is in good shape. Right now, it took me a minute to clean this up. I do share this space with my 2 daughters. I have my studio here, their playroom over there, my desk over here, a keyboard and some guitars over here. So there's a lot of mess in here a lot of the time. So I tried to get it as clean as I could before hitting record. I also took into account the lighting. I'm using this very fancy product called a window to light this video, and the sun, very handy device and lighting source. And then audio is the other thing that you need to take into account, and I've already got that covered with my MV88 Plus. So just make sure that you have your audio, your video, and your lighting good to go. And I got that AVL from a friend of mine named Sean Cannell. He's a wonderful influencer on YouTube. Check out his channel, Think Media, to get all the information on how to make great looking and great sounding videos very, very quickly and easily.
Laura, this is a really important time for all of us in the church, and I think this is going to be a huge help to so many people. So thanks for taking your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you have any more questions, please feel free to visit us at Shure.com.
Whether it's a lack of musicians or the desire for a more consistent worship experience, there are lots of practical reasons for using multitracks. Easter presents a great opportunity to raise the bar for your teams. So if you've been considering multitracks, this is a great time to do so. In fact, that's what we did here at Church of the Highlands a few years ago and haven't looked back. With all of that in mind, we wanted to reach out to Kristian Ponsford from Multitracks to gather his input on what churches should keep in mind when rolling out multitracks for Easter and beyond. Kristian, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my privilege. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Chris. It's my total delight to be with you here today.
Before we dig in, tell us about your current role at Multitracks.
So my job title is Director of Products for Multitracks.com, and every day I get to collaborate with what I think is the most incredible team of people. We have a wide variety of roles in the company, from product managers to app developers to website coders to people that create the chord charts, audio engineers that make the multitracks, videographers, graphic designers, and probably everything else in between, to make sure that we create resources that help worship leaders lead worship well.
Kristian, what are some of the biggest benefits that Multitracks offers, especially for small to medium-sized churches?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably difficult to articulate succinctly in one question, because we honestly do so much now. But if I wanted to boil it down, it would be this: that we have a suite, an ecosystem of products that work together to save worship leaders time so they can focus on what really matters. So one side of the ecosystem is all of the rehearsals and the preparation products, things like Chart Builder, things like Rehearsal Mix, which allow you to read the chord charts in the language and in the style that you like to read it in, and Rehearsal Mix that allows you to listen to the audio stems to learn the parts. Right through to our live suite of products like Playback, which is our iOS app for playing back the multitracks, and things like our sounds department of Kemper profiles and keyboard patches. And all of this ecosystem works together to do one of two things. One, to free you up to focus on what really matters. And number two, to help you create environments where people can more easily encounter Jesus. And used together is where the absolute power is. And that's where it just becomes really life-giving and time-saving.
What considerations should worship teams keep in mind prior to getting started?
I think we should remember that it's a journey that we take our worship teams on, and it's a tool that our worship teams can use. And I say that because it is a journey. It's not a switch that we can just turn on and instantly everything is going to jump to a new level. I relate this often to the time I first started playing guitar. It took a while for me to master those chord changes. Then it got a whole more complicated when I tried to sing and play guitar together. Now it's second nature, and it's just what I do. And remembering that learning a new instrument is useful when we're introducing technology, that there is a bit of a learning curve involved. Thankfully, it's way easier than it ever used to be, and it's not that difficult to onboard people. But there will be some investment needed into the time to do it well. And also remember that it's a tool, that it's not something that has to be used. We're not saying that your worship leading is invalidated if you don't use multi-tracks, but it is a tool that we can use to better enhance the environments for people to encounter God more easily, and also to make your worship teams more comfortable on stage so that they can be the biggest versions of themselves and really give everything that they have to that time of worship.
Kristian, leading volunteer worship and sound teams through change at the same time can be a bit of a balancing act. What suggestions do you have for leading teams into and through the on-ramping process?
Yeah, this is another great question. And let me answer this by looking at the story of King David in the Bible. There's a psalm, I think it's Psalm 142. And in there, King David is down on his luck. He's already been anointed for service, but he kind of makes this prayer that says, that I know that I've got these great responsibilities, but I've got no one to help me do this. And if only I had people. That's my paraphrase of it. And I think that's a prayer that I found myself as a worship leader praying and crying out before. That I've got this responsibility. I feel that I've been anointed for service, but I've got no one around me to help me. Now fast forward to 2 Samuel. And we see this story of King David listing a mighty list of warriors and of heroes and champions that form part of his army. And it even tells this story that King David so longed for a drink from one particular well that his loyal warriors broke camp in the middle of the night, crossed enemy lines to get him a drink from that one particular well to bring it back to him. So what happened between that psalm and 2 Samuel, where he went from having no one to having the most incredible list of warriors that were world famous? Well, I think the answer is in 1 Samuel. And in 1 Samuel, it tells a story of King David being in a cave, again, kind of a little bit despondent. And it says that he was surrounded by people who were despondent, in despair, in debt, down on their luck, and kind of the outcasts, and they surrounded themselves around King David, and he became their commander, and he trained them. So here's the lesson. Those same people that you would not build an army with, in 1 Samuel became the mighty warriors that changed the world in 2 Samuel. What happened? King David invested in them, he surrounded himself by them, and he trained them. My temptation, maybe yours as a worship leader, is to pray this prayer, if only I had that guitar player, if only I had that sound guy, if only I had that band from that church or that group of people, I'd be able to live up to everything that's in my calling. Well, the lesson here is maybe everything you need you already have, but you need to invest, disciple, and grow those people. So this is what I think we do when we're leading volunteers, is we always use technology as a tool and never a replacement. That actually using this technology well can help grow and disciple our people to be all that God would have them to be and not replace them. That actually using multi-tracks, using chart builder, using rehearsal mix, using playback, using MIDI out, and the list goes on, using it well frees up our team to focus on what really matters, to worship God and create environments where people can encounter Jesus, and doesn't say you're invalid and we don't need you. It's all about people. Our job is to be worship pastors with a capital W and pastors with a capital P. And let's use these tools to do that really well, to grow people and to see God's kingdom come in our own environments through the lives of the team members that we lead.
Man, that's really encouraging. Kristian, speaking of technology, let's talk about a few scenarios. Let's start with production considerations for, say, an 80-person smaller church that may not have the resources or volunteers that a larger church would.
So I think in a church of 80, the pressures that most people would be under are pressures of lack of resources, probably lack of money, lack of time, and lack of people. And I think that's the focus that we want to help worship leaders with in that context. So I am an Ableton Live trainer. I spent most of my career as a worship leader leveraging Ableton Live and also training other people in how to do that. And several years ago, I made the switch from Ableton Live to playback. And here's the reason why. I am competent in Ableton, and I can probably do most things really well in Ableton Live. However, being able to pass that on, being able to help other people, being able to free myself up to focus on other areas was becoming difficult for me to do so. I could never really take time off. I'd be on holiday and get a phone call because the technology left behind at church wouldn't work well. And my 8-year-old son now can program a worship set in Playback, our iOS app, quicker and easier than I can in Ableton Live. Not because it's basic, but because it's intuitive and simple to understand. So, leveraging technology in that environment can help us with these budget requirements, with the lack of people and the lack of resources. Maybe because of lack of volunteers, we don't have someone who every week can do the words or the media well for us. Well, we could leverage MIDI out to send MIDI notes to ProPresenter or to Easy Worship, which could automate those slides for us. Again, not replacing people, but freeing up that operator to still be able to engage, still be able to be part of the service without the requirement of pressing spacebar every single time the words need to change. A couple of things happen. Firstly, the environment gets better. People get more comfortable worshiping God because the lyrics are always there when we need them. But number two, the volunteer is more likely to volunteer every week because the pressure has been lifted off of them to always get it right. Maybe money and budgetary requirements is the thing that's hindering a team of 80 people or a church around the size of 80. And I say this because I've been there where money is tight and you end up making set list decisions based on budgetary requirements. What tracks do I have? Or I don't have time to set up a new track. So I start making set list decisions based on lack of resources as opposed to responding to ministry. Now, things like rentals from Playback really help you do that because you can just rent a song rather than buy a song. So for the price of buying 2 tracks, you can have 16 rentals every month, and you can rent a song from any one of the 13,000 songs on our catalogue without investing money into that song. So really helpful, a really way of making it cost effective and really affordable. I think the 2 other things I would mention for a church of that size would be, number 1, being responsive. So quite regularly I would lead worship, walk off the platform, and maybe my church pastor would stand up and preach a message I wasn't expecting, or it wasn't the landing to the message that I thought it was going to be. Well, again, I could open up Playback and I could rent any song. So I could filter by the theme or filter by the type of message that he's preaching and go and find all of the songs that match that theme, press download, and by the time I walk back on the platform, I'm ready to lead that song and have all the lights and the lyrics follow me because I've been able to lean into that technology. But finally, and probably the most important, you want stability. In a church where there's a lack of resources and you're the person that's trying to make everything happen, you need to be comfortable. You need to know that the technology you're leaning into is going to work flawlessly for you when you need it. There's nothing worse than leading worship with the doubt that it might not trigger, the tracks might not work, the lights might not come up, the sound might not be right. So using something that's been tried, tested, invested in, put a huge amount of weight on, means that you can stand on that platform with all of the confidence, security and stability that you need. So those are the things that I would say would be worth considering and looking for a church of 80 or so.
So now take us through considerations for churches that are 300 and above.
Yeah, I think in a church of 300, there's a couple of things that change from a church of 80. Now, the core technology doesn't actually change. I've used this equipment in churches of 30, in churches of 400, multi-campus, multi-service, and at festivals and events with 3,000 in the room. I think it's the implementation that changes. So generally, as we go up in church size, there's the need for greater collaboration. And this might be because we're delivering multiple services, or we have multiple campuses, or just more people involved in the design and the process. So we want tools that allow us to collaborate well and share that responsibility well so it doesn't fall on just one person like it might in a smaller church. So I think the ability to collaborate is key. I think often, because we're thinking about multi-service, multi-campus, And timings, maybe in a larger church, our timings are a little bit more restricted. So we want to think about transitions well. We want to make every moment count. We want to think about how we flow from one song to another song, or how we maybe come out of a time of worship into the message or into announcements or the leveraging of media. So doing transitions really well is something that we want to think about, and we want to understand how we do that. Also, I think as we grow in church size, maybe the capacity of our tech teams has improved. Maybe we've been growing those people to a level where now they can handle and work with a more complicated setup, or we're joined by higher capacity volunteers or staff members. So maybe in a smaller environment, giving a stereo pair of tracks is perfect. But in a larger church, we might want to give maybe 10 different outputs to the sound guy so he can mix the stems of the tracks in with the live band to get that really cohesive sound working well. But finally, I think passing on of knowledge is really key. As a church grows, you're going to quickly hit your capacity unless you're continually investing, passing on and bringing up not just the next generation, but going wide as well. So passing on that knowledge is really key. Being able to share those resources across your team, both of skills and the physical resources, is probably going to be one of the most important things you could do.
Kristian, new users to multi-tracks probably come up against a number of the same challenges. What are the most common ones, as well as some solutions?
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the challenges are quite common across new users. And I think I could probably separate them into two areas. One would be people and one would be gear and technology. So let's look at people first. I think introducing anything new can cause certain insecurities or certain reservations to come to the surface. And that's an incredible opportunity to pastor and develop people. It might be that your band members haven't played to a metronome before, or the introduction of a guide cue talking them through the sections, or even in-ear monitors is new and alien to them. And we need to take time to coach, develop and lead them through and help them understand that life on the other side of that is always better, it's always enhanced, it's always more comfortable, but there's a learning curve to this. I think often for this reason, we would suggest introducing it slowly. So maybe we introduce a click track to one song in our weekly rehearsal until the band are comfortable with the idea of playing in time to a metronome. Then maybe we add an ambient pad, something that just fills out the sound underneath to give us a bass to work on and means that we don't need to all play all of the time. Then maybe we start practicing to a track with the guide cue that talks us through verse, chorus, and we learn playing to the arrangement that way. And then jumping around within that arrangement and listening to the guide cue so we know where we're going next. And then we start mixing in the stems. And when we've done that in the comfort of rehearsal, then we take one song to a service and we give it a live run. And constantly along this process, we evaluate, we feedback, we chat with each other to see how we're feeling. So I think the challenges are often people related, and that's where we use our skills as leaders and of knowing our people to pastor them through change. And no change is easy, and all change involves loss of some description. The other common challenge is understanding the gear and the requirements to make that happen. And thankfully, we've never been in a time where technology is more affordable or more accessible than it is now. And it does start with the ability to be able to hear well on stage. So in-ear monitors are a requirement for that. But again, they don't have to be thousands of dollars anymore. They can be simple in-ear phones that plug into a headphone amp that sits on the floor. And rather than wasting so much of your time telling you about all the options now, simply visit multitracks.com and you can get an idea of some of the equipment that you might need. And we've got some webinars on the 5 things you need to run tracks in church, and likewise we've got diagrams that can help you there. But I think it's worth recognizing that there's people challenges and there's gear and technology challenges, and being able to work across both of them. I think quickly on the in-ear side, again, introducing those to people can make them feel a little bit disconnected from the congregation. And there's lots of things we can do there. We can move the click to just one ear. So in the same way, if you're in a coffee shop, you might lean your hearing to listen to a conversation over there. I find panning the click to one side really helpful. It also means for the people that do take one ear out, and we know that we shouldn't, but for the people that do take one ear out, if they take the ear out that doesn't have the click or the guide track in it, that's not going to bleed into the microphone. Also putting an ambient mic or a microphone that's picking up the room and tucking that back into our ears can really help with the comfort on stage, and maybe a touch of reverb for our vocalists so it doesn't sound quite so dry. So there's lots of tricks and hacks that we can use to make people feel comfortable when implementing technology along the way, but do it slowly and do it with constant communication, and you're probably on a fairly good road there.
Let's talk about Easter for a moment and the rehearsal mix section of your site, which is one of my personal favorites, and maybe a few of your favorite tools.
Yeah, so I think to best understand that, it's helpful if I give you a high-level view of the ecosystem at Multitracks and how it all ties together. So when I'm creating my thoughtful set list, I like to start in our Chart Builder app. So I get my iPad, and it gives me access to 13,000 different songs, and it gives me the lyrics and the chords and the song map of the arrangement, and I can change how that looks in the way that I like to see chords. So I can change from letters to numbers, I can add a capo on there, I can navigate around the song, I can put on MD notes, and I can really look at the song in detail. But not only can I do that, I can also filter those songs based on theme, on genre, on style, so that I can go in and say, okay, what songs are applicable for the service that I'm trying to create? And I can build my set list and change my key. The other thing I can do is I can access rehearsal mix from Chart Builder. So that gives me the ability to swipe up at the bottom of the app, press play, listen to the original song, and get an idea for its vibe, its energy, and how well it's going to link with or without the previous song. Once I've done all of this, I will save that set list and I'll add people to it. So I'll add my band members to the set list and I'll press send, and they'll get a notification to tell them that the set list is available. And they can open this in their app or on the website. And again, they can look at the set list and they can access rehearsal mix to learn their part. So my electric guitar player will open up song 1. He'll click on the electric guitar section and maybe he's playing lead 1 or lead 2 or rhythm. And he'll be able to listen to the electric guitar raised in the mix so he can get the tone right and get the part right. Then when he's ready to practice, he can minus mix to take the electric guitar out, and he can play along and fill in the part, all the time practicing to the click and the guide track, so that when he arrives on a Sunday or at our midweek rehearsal, he's super prepared and ready to go. And all of my musicians can do that using Chart Builder and Rehearsal Mix. In the meantime, I will open up Playback, and in Playback I can retrieve that set list and I can start building my transitions. So which songs are going to flow together. Maybe I'm creating a medley of different parts of songs. Maybe I want one song to flow into an ambient pad while we do prayer or read scripture, and I can go down and program my service using Playback. I'll also go down through the faders and I'll decide what instruments I want in each song, what stems I want in each song, and program that as well. And if I needed to, I could share that with another music director or somebody else at another campus and press save. Then when I arrive on the Sunday morning, I can plug all of that in to our audio interface, connect it to our network so that then our Pro Presenter slides will be automated based on everything that I've done ahead of the week. So I can do that from anywhere. I can do that from my office, I could do it from a coffee shop, I could do it in a different room at my house or in my church building. And I can be really responsive to collaboration and also building this thoughtful set list and allowing my whole team to arrive feeling really prepared. But here's the great thing with set lists is now I can save that and open up a different set list that I might be leading this week and come back to that idea for Easter and keep crafting it as well. So there's a whole load of resources there for us to be able to use, to lean into, to create thoughtful set lists, to lead great times of worship.
Kristian, lastly, as someone with a background in worship leading, what speaks to you most about Multitracks and why?
Well, thank you for asking that question. My background before Multitracks was 20 years of worship leading, and many of those paid as a worship pastor, creative director in a variety of different churches in different contexts. So the mobile church that moved in and out of a cinema complex, through to a smaller rural church right through to a city-based multi-campus, multi-service churches. So genuinely have used this in groups of 30 and 3,000. I was also privileged to be invited to lead in various UK and European festivals and at events with much larger tech setups and environments. So I've really been able to leverage and use this technology in a few different environments. But before I worked or did anything with multi-tracks, I was a customer and a user of their technology first. And I realized the difference it made for my leading and for my week, and the difference it made to me as an individual. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, because I genuinely saw God open up opportunities for me that I was able to take full opportunity of, because of the power of the technology and the resources that were backing up my worship leading. Then I got to meet the team, and I got to realize that multi-track started because of one person, Philip Edwards, our founder, who was a worship leader in Austin, Texas, who was using too much of his Saturday to prepare for Sunday and was fearful that his family were missing out on his time. So chased this single mission of creating resources that could save other worship leaders time so they could focus on what really matters. And I've said that phrase a few times because it's core of everything that we do. So the heart behind what we do is to resource worship leaders, because we love the church, we love worship leaders, and we know the power of worship in a corporate setting, and we want to make our worship leaders, our users, the very best they can be, and help them lead with confidence and assurance. So that drives through everything that we do. So I think the thing that I love most is not just the quality of the resources, but it's the heart that goes behind it. And it's a heart for the worship leaders in the local church, but it's also a heart for the songwriters and for the people that create these songs that we as worship leaders can use. Fresh songs are the lifeblood of me as a worship leader, and multi-tracks are amazing at honouring, looking after, protecting, championing the songwriter so that their resources can really reach a global platform and really be put into the hands of the local church, and they act as a bridge between those two worlds incredibly well. I am genuinely living my best life, my dream job, working for an incredible organisation helping to resource worship leaders across the world, and it's something that I don't take lightly, and I absolutely love.
Kristian, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you. It's been great to be here, and I hope some of these answers are helpful for the listeners and the watchers of this show.
Thanks again for watching, and God bless.